It just starts with a very honest conversation. It starts with, I'm here for you. I've had my own issues. I've had my own struggles. Let's be human here. Sometimes me sharing that first gives them license and permission to open up. But I also like this very powerful analogy is before we can heal and grow and find fulfillment and joy, we have to look at the dark issues, and we have to stop running from pain.
Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, founder of Be Better Media and a mom of 4, passionate about human connection. Throughout my journey, I have experienced many What I Meant to Say moments. But since life doesn't give us do-overs, I've created a space to reflect and tell our stories again, with a little more grace for ourselves and the hope that we can help others and be better for having listened. Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, and I'm here today with Kevin Vance. We met through Shift Adapt and amazing breath work, and Kevin's a former Division I athlete and turned first responder, and I'm so excited to have this conversation today, so thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. We could go so many different ways with
We can.
all of the things since we've connected at Shift Adapt with Brian McKenzie and Emily Hightower and the amazing healing work they're doing through breath work and just nervous system shifts. Basically, the Shift Adapt, their work is incredible.
And very necessary today. It's coming from the military and several deployments within several government organizations, and then working locally for a large organization in the United States as a first responder. We've recognized certain behaviors long-term that do change and not for the better, that are a result of a taxed nervous system.
Yeah.
And what Emily refers to as flipping the lid. People spending too much time in their sympathetic tone and basically frying their nervous system for decades, and years after years of relying on the parasympathetic and the sympathetic to react to chaotic conditions, and we've seen a lot of people have anxiety as a result of that. Mm-hmm. So their program, anything I can do to highlight it, I see tremendous value in giving people the tools to help them downshift and downregulate and become aware of what's happening to them when they do go on these emergency calls or they do get into chaotic situations overseas, serving the military. It's incredible what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think something I've learned through working with them, I never realized personally how, and I haven't been in any of the situations that you've been in your life, but you don't realize whether you're running at that sympathetic state, that you're running so high, because it starts to feel normal. And so whatever your life experience has been, if you've been up there with your lid flipped for so long, it feels normal to you. And until someone can help you, like they do, come down and learn the tools to feel that balance and being able to widen that window of tolerance, like she talks about, you don't know.
You don't. And specifically for me, and what I've learned is, because I was in the sympathetic tone for so long that my brain changed to adapt to the environment. So my hypothalamus, my pituitary, had actually been enlarged from spending so much time overseas. That all got exacerbated by going on emergency calls for the better half of 30 years of my life. So recognizing that the biochemistry that my brain was pumping into my system was a result of years of relying on my sympathetic response, my behavioral response to external stimuli. So that created some issues for me. And we're only learning right now in the conversations that I have with people who have been exposed to this the better half of their whole adult life, is there are a lot of people out there that are suffering from anxiety, that don't understand what it is and where it comes from, but simply the result of you've been exposed to these extreme environments, which is very unnatural to the human existence, throughout all of human existence. Your brain possibly has changed as a result. Anxiety is now the effect of that life that you've led, but it's all treatable. And it starts with awareness. And Brian and Emily's program are just, they're critical. They're critical for a lot of people. The information that they have and their experience with breath work and meditation and down regulating and really understanding the nuances of it. There's thousands of people that could use it. And that of course now relates to all our nurses, emergency room doctors, right? Our firefighters, our law enforcement. It
gives me chills. It's all the things that are making the world go and keep us safe and move us forward. And I would love, just so people can understand like where you came from. I said, so you started in athletics as a water polo player.
I did.
And then can you tell people about, the number of years where you started there, and then how that led to the military and first responding?
I went to college at UCSD in San Diego. And during the summers, I would lifeguard on the beach in San Diego, where I worked with amazing people, because here we're protecting people, we are saving lives. But I was also, working with people that were great mentors for me. And it was about our relationships that we develop with the public, how we serve the public. I come from a family of nurses and doctors. Cool. So service has always been, in our DNA. And I was very attracted, based on some World War II books, to the frogman community, based on my love affair with the ocean, the water, and my drive, my sense of patriotism, my sense of duty to the U.S. government, where I worked in an office that was really a group of people with all different specialties within the special operations community and the intelligence community. And I deployed until 2009. And it was a series of events and personal evaluation about what I wanted in the future, because I wasn't married. I did not have a family. I really wanted that. But I knew that I needed to make some serious changes in my life if I was to have that in my life. Because it was very busy. It was very rewarding, but it was very busy. So as a corpsman, as a medic, as a medical officer in the units that I was a part of, I just made a couple calls to a couple friends who I had served with in the military that were now firefighters. And one specifically, I called and I said, do you like it? And he said, nope, I love it. He's like, let's get coffee when you come home from deployment. And that changed everything. I'm a fire captain currently. And it's been very fulfilling, very rewarding. I work with wonderful people that, serve their communities. And it's a group of people that understand the value of higher purpose as well as the military.
It's huge.
And I'm in the middle of my transition now. So it's onward to, I think, take the lessons that I've learned, the easy way and the hard way.
Yeah, that's why I do this show, honestly. I'm like, what can we learn from what we've been through? Right. And hopefully just impart it in a way that someone might grab onto it. It's never about like, do this because I said so, but just that generational learning that happens because we've been through something. And I believe like we go through hard things so that we can share them with other people and maybe help them along the way.
Exactly. And you become an advocate. This is what I know. This is what I've experienced. This is what I can speak to.
Yeah.
And I don't have the answers, but I have a lot of network, and I have a lot of people in my network, and I have a lot of resources, and it may serve you, it might not.
Yeah.
But this is what's worked for me.
Yeah.
So.
I know. And that power of human connection right now is coming through so strong. That's always been something I've been really, passionate about. Yeah. And I get a certain feeling when I meet certain people. And the day that I met you, you had your open water hat on, and I love the water too. I mean, being in the ocean, being even in the pool, like I was a pool swimmer my whole life, but getting to the ocean and live down here, and it's so healing. And so I saw your open water hat, and then I got that feeling, and then you started talking about your family and your little girl, and I was like, oh yeah, there's something here. So here we get to these conversations just because out of curiosity and just, I love the way that you approach the world with such an open heart, having been through, you've seen so many things. And I think it's hard in the world today to be, to be that masculine figure, to be somebody who is always there to help others and serve. But we take on so much when we've seen so much. And so I'm very curious to dive into like the ways that you've started to heal from some of the things that you've seen overseas and being a firefighter.
Yeah, I look at the military and the first responder communities as we have a front row seat to the human condition. We're going to see the best in humanity. We're going to be inspired by it. Those people in our community are going to make us better and enrich our lives, but we also see catastrophe. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't easy. Some people deal with trauma, and they'll have an immediate response to that trauma, and sometimes it's cumulative. For me, I started to have behavioral changes and dark days as a result of my brain changing, which was exacerbated by sleep deprivation in my line of work. But there was also spiritual deprivation. So much of my life had been dedicated to skill sets and performance. And I'm very fortunate to have people around me where I can have bigger discussions about life. And certainly that the topic of a more spiritual and balanced life has come up again and again, but the timing for me to make that shift just wasn't there. But I also knew that there were people out there that had solutions to my problems. And a lot of it was, I would be blue, and I didn't know why I would be blue. I would have a tremendous amount of rage. I had no idea where that was coming from. It broke me down to the point where I knew that I really had to do something for myself and my family. But at the same time, it created, a lot of humility, because we're all human. We're all going to process things differently. So it started my journey, and I just started looking at programs across the United States. I knew there were solutions. I knew it wasn't going to be pharmacological.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
There was enough conversation within the veteran community that basically drugs were going to exacerbate problems and not address root causes. So my journey has taken me from breath work and meditation with Brian McKenzie and Emily Hightower, very powerful. And life-changing in its own respect, to, attaching myself to certain belief systems and enriching myself with certain value systems and the virtues of those value systems that help me live a more fulfilling, joyful life. And plant medicine. Plant medicine has, had a tremendous effect on my life, because the experiences that I've had is I've had to look at the ugly side and face it in order to heal, and see it for what it is, forgive myself, be gentler with myself because of it, but also have these profound, very broad, wide experiences that you can't explain, you can't put into words, but know that you're part of something much bigger than yourself, but you're a part of it. Yet we're all interconnected.
Right.
And that reinforced all the spiritual work that I was doing. So marrying those two for me were life-changing.
Yeah. And that concept of like really looking yourself in the mirror and coming to terms with where you struggle and how to heal through it and get better is super scary. And I think not that everybody does this, but there's a potential to kind of skip that stuff and want to feel better. So we look for things that and I feel like, how do you, when someone's struggling, how do you take that first step to when you need to look, you need to look in the mirror, but I think that's the hardest thing to do.
I love, I love the making analogies with nature and how nature thrives. Um, and there's several ways I look at it. When I am interacting with a first responder, or someone recently retired from those communities, or someone from the veteran community that may be struggling, it just starts with a very honest conversation. It starts with, "I'm here for you. I've had my own issues. I've had my own struggles. Let's be human here." Sometimes me sharing that first gives them license and permission to open up. But I also like this very powerful analogy is before we can heal and grow and find fulfillment and joy, we have to look at the dark issues, and we have to stop running from pain, because that's a way of, it's a spiritual bypass,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
So how do I find the joy? How do I find the fulfillment? It's like you can't bypass what's holding you back. And I love the the comparison about bison and the buffalo. And it's the only animal that we know of in the herd that runs, when the storm comes in, they run directly into the storm. And as a herd, they follow each other. And as torrential as it may be, they know that it's going to last a lot shorter. So they move right towards it. So by understanding that, I know that these are elements that every human will deal with. But we have each other, we have a network, we know our way through that. Through that is, we have to show courage, but we have to support one another and know that you're loved and you're supported, and I understand, and show a tremendous amount of patience, because especially with men in the communities that I come from, right, there's a lot of sometimes ego. There's a lot of stubbornness. There's a lot of fear of entering those gentler spaces, those painful places. But the way through is, into the storm, in order to get you into your heart. And then that's where, for me, joy and fulfillment and a more purposeful life, it starts here, not here.
Yeah. Yeah, and knowing how those two things connect, because we live, like, as athletes, as first responders, we were living up here so much, right?
Constantly.
And that fear of connecting to your heart, and especially, like we were saying, in the male population, not being normalized. Because I was having this conversation this morning, like, as women, we do connect in more of a heart space more often. But I see through so many of these conversations that I've had the privilege to have, this keeps coming up. The ability for men to have that sense of community and have these conversations. And what are some of the places that you've been able to have that sense?
There are certain veteran organizations that do a very good job about bringing people together. Certainly in the plant medicine communities, our integration is very, very powerful, because it brings people to a very raw and vulnerable place. But because you're in those spaces and what people are sharing is so powerful, it gives people license and permission to say, well, that person's being very courageous.
Yeah.
And they'll be very willing to share what might, trouble them, or they might be scared to share. But knowing that by releasing that into the world, they're basically offloading their burdens. But there are, I think, healthier conversations among men these days, and it's so wonderful, because we talk about generational trauma we have in the past, and it will be perpetuated unless we break certain cycles.
Yeah.
And in order to move into a healthier masculine space as men, I think we have to have good examples too. We have to look back in history, because we have had it.
Yeah.
But what has robbed us of that? And part of it, in my understanding, part of it is understanding what crying is and the value that it holds. But it also is, it's also looking at these warrior civilizations that did exist, and the practices and the behaviors that were a part of their communities that were normalized. And part of that was dealing with trauma. So ancient Greek societies and even Native American tribes here in the United States and the First Nations in Canada, before they came back into their communities or their tribes, there was a rite of passage, because the elders and the shaman and the healers knew, if you bring that trauma back, it's going to affect, right,
Wow.
the community. So it was some of those tribes would build a fire in a labyrinth, and it was a process of walking with the pain that you had, but releasing it. And there was no stigma.
Beautiful.
There was no stigma to crying. And men today, right, we're taught from a very young age, if you lose a baseball game, soccer game, or, right, hey, bury that. That's not a sign of strength. It's a sign of weakness. And really, that did us a disservice.
Yeah.
Knowing that, hold on, to be emotionally honest is to be strong. To release this will keep you strong and make you stronger. And not to stigmatize it, not to label being emotional as less than, or certainly you're a weaker version. So that by normalizing it, we can say, we know this person has some pain, or they're expressing some type of emotion, and that's very natural, and that's okay. And let them have that, and know when to step into that to support them, and know that it's okay.
Yeah.
But that's weight coming off of people.
It's huge.
Right, and people will move into the world knowing that, right, the self-judgment that's applied to it as well, and the guilt and the shame that we put on ourselves because of it, because of the imprint and culturally that we put on it, really holds people back. And we can be softer human beings, but at the same time, that doesn't make us weak. We can be stronger because of it.
Yeah. No, that release of shame and being in places where that's being done and normalized, I never realized how heavy that blanket was, and even what shame was, until I came through. For me, it was coming through a divorce and feeling like a failure, right? And whatever that thing was, until the first time I just opened up and told somebody about it, and she was like, I'm on my second marriage. Like, it's okay. And all of a sudden it kind of crystallized for me. I was like, until you say it, nobody knows what you're going through. It's all darkness. It feels heavy. And then when you shine the light on it, it dissipates. And that can be for so many, whatever that trauma is in anyone's life, whatever your experience is, the process is the same.
Yes. You can't think to heal. We have to feel to heal.
Yeah.
And by feeling it and allowing that, and giving yourself permission to work through it by feeling it, there's no bypass in that. You go directly to it, and you show yourself some self-compassion. You forgive yourself for placing the guilt and the shame on it, and you give yourself a space to release it. Yeah,
and become like an evolving version of yourself, which is so empowering and so cool, and it leads to so many great things, and you never know where you're going to get. You just have to keep taking that next step. And but something that's coming to me is the sense of what integration really means, and you brought that up with the psychedelic journey and the concept. Like it's out there in everyone's talking. You hear a lot about psychedelics these days, maybe just in the healing community, but I feel like it's a topic on the rise. But what's the difference between that just more recreational use of mushrooms or whatever it is, and this real use of psychedelics as a healing integrated path?
I think it starts with how we look at the medicines. Some people will label these things drugs because it can put you in an altered state. Some people will look at like, this is a vehicle and I can have fun with this, so recreation. But really, if you look at these medicines and how the thousands of years that they've been existed and used in certain cultures across the world, they're in different forms across the world. there's a tremendous intelligence that these medicines hold. If you really embrace that aspect of the potential of these medicines, and go into these ceremonies with an intention that really comes from here, what I have found is those medicines will recognize that. The intelligence of the medicines will recognize that you've showed up to do the work. And you're rewarded for that by whether dealing with something very directly, or there's what we call a download, or a message that's presented to confront that. And the more time I spend here, the more profound my experience. So really with integration, it's taking men and people and women from all walks of life, and understanding that we've existed here for so long that we need to look at systems as a whole and what's preventing us from growing and expanding. And it might be pain, it might be trauma, but it also might be you're stuck here. And it's that relationship, the heart coherence between our mind and our heart, getting out of our ego and living a more fulfilling life from this space. And it's about helping people travel, or being stuck here and moving into their heart. And integration is a place that requires a lot of courage, but it's sacred. And the people that I have been affiliated with and lucky to have met and know for many years, create a container where it's very safe for people to circle, as we always have as a human civilization, and to honor one another, and to share in this space, and to respect what is to come up, knowing that whatever this person brings up is only going to serve himself and his family, but have ripple effects in their community and their organizations, as a stronger leader, right? A more powerful human in terms of where they are centered in their life. That again is going to create a vibration, and that consciousness shift for them will have effects on everything around them.
Yeah. And it's tremendous to hear the way you break that down, because it doesn't just show how we're all interconnected, right, as people, but it's the mind, body, and spirit. It's the earth and all the things that she gives us, and the way that everything's connected. It's not just people being connected. It's taking all of these things and integrating them. And it's amazing when you sit back and watch and realize how connected everything really is. And and then the way that blends into generational healing, and having men who can heal. And there's just so many things that I feel like are off in society today, with a certain conversation about, what's a woman's role and what's men's role, and all the things that are expected of us. But there's this place within this community, this healing community, that is, it brings everybody down. And the first time that I met a shaman, I was on the Central Coast, and I didn't even know anything about the shamanistic traditions or anything. But I had this conversation, I think it was in my 30s, and I was like, what was that? And it stuck with me. And it's funny to see how things over the course of 20 years add on to each other. And I know that's, partly been your experience too, of just can you make little connections through everything you've been through, where that meant something, and you'd pull on the next thread.
For me, it was, I think I call it the nudge. There's nudges in life, and people might call it spirit or the divine or life's way of bringing you something, the universe. And certainly for me, before I joined the military, I'll never forget, there was a great friend. She was very spiritual. She was one of those people that was wise well beyond her years. And it's just the way she was. She grew up, and the education her parents fostered with her. But she said, "Are you sure you want to join the military?" I said, yeah, this is something I really want to do. And she said, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but just know that you may enter a spiritual prison. And I never forgot those words. And not to say that the military is a spiritual prison, because I don't necessarily believe it, but no one could have predicted the wars that we would have been fighting and the commitment that it would take from all of our communities in national defense to address it. And it
Because you're just post 9/11.
yeah,
right?
and it was a very, to use a very simple word, it's a very busy time for a long time that required a lot of our people. But what's the cost of that, right? And people will put it framework as PTSD, right? But again, with language, I think we talk about post-traumatic stress, but we're not talking about post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
And how we shift out of that. So every deployment that I would go on, I would have the books that I would take me every deployment, and that was my ground. And so
What books?
the Tao Te Ching,
Okay.
and there was a great book that I took on multiple deployments, and it's a book by Stephen Mitchell, and it's like the Christ according to the Buddha, and it's basically how Buddhism and Christianity, the similar values that they share, and the messages that Jesus has espoused, and the Buddha,
Okay.
and how common they are.
Wow.
So finding the common threads in those spiritual faiths, kept me.
Who taught you? Did that come through your childhood?
No, my parents always gave me the freedom to discover what it was, because I would see kids growing up in school and they had the cross on their neck, and I didn't know what that was. And I would ask my mom, and my mom just would say, it's up to you. This is one religion, but it's up to you to find out, the path that you want to take. And so in college, we go to college, but for me, it was more about kind of finding me and my place in all of it. And I've always known, because of my relationship with nature and surfing and spearfishing, and swimming in the ocean, there's something very magical about it.
Yeah.
That, again, you can't put words to. There's only feeling attached to it. That I would find being grounded in my most quiet moments, when the wisdom that we all carry, the knowingness that we all have, would come up when I would go into nature and spend some time in nature, so that I could, again, get rid of the noise and put things in perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I remember the first time, I didn't grow up by the beach, and I didn't really make it to the beach until, I remember one time at 3 years old, but then it was like another 10 years. And my family always went to the mountains, which is lovely, but I got to the beach and at 13, and I looked at my mom and I was like, can we come here for my birthday? She's like, sure. Because there's something so powerful, excuse me, about being by the water and in the water. And I just, to know that, that gentle spirit, and to go to the places that you have been, that like gigantic range of human experiences, so powerful.
It is. And I why I feel so fortunate, again, is nothing has been internally driven just by myself. Yes, there is intuition, and there's something we need to tap in within ourselves to help drive us. But at the same time, I've been lucky to be surrounded by amazing human beings that all have these wonderful gifts. And my life, for instance, I met you. And why did I meet you? Because I was on this quest to find answers, solutions, but not only for myself, but for other people that were struggling in the firefighting community when it came to behavioral wellness. What resources could we bring to bear within our behavioral wellness programs within certain organizations to strengthen them, who those people were. So it was just this path.
Yeah.
And I met Brian and Emily, then I got to meet you, and you find these people that are all in these different lanes of life, but at the same time on a similar path.
Yeah, and more what I've realized as I've done this is that as things come together, you see that everyone's working from their strengths. And I think like earlier in life, a lot of times we're working from, especially as athletes, like what can I get better at? Right? Like maybe this is my weakness, so I need to hammer that. And something that's shifted for me is realizing like, okay, what are you good at? And how good can you get at that thing? And then who are the people you can surround yourself with that are good at other things? And then let that all come together rather than that feeling of that individualism, which like generationally, that was something that came through like the World War II generation. We're really, as Americans or as athletes, like we're individuals. But that concept of community, the more you heal, the more you realize that concept of community is what's getting us all through.
And there are great examples in the military life and the first responder life of when you do, say, if it's mission-centric or if it's reacting to an event, and we'll solve that big incident, right, is we can only get so far as individuals because the scope of practice in the military is all the different disciplines, and you're trying to master all these different disciplines. And same thing in the firefighter world is there are various disciplines that you could spend your whole career trying to master. And the reality is it's a long road that requires a lot of commitment. But when you go to these incidents or you go on these operations, everyone comes together and all the strengths are highlighted based on what people are good at. And operations and performance in those respective areas and the success of those is largely dependent on people's strengths.
So cool. So cool. I'm going back to the first day that we met and listening to you talk about your family and a lot of the things just like, see, you're so, I just love how you beam when you're, I think it's such an amazing gift because to have a family is, to me, it's God's greatest gift. It's my favorite thing to do, to have my kids, to be that generational learning that works both ways, so that was something I really grabbed onto when we met. And how have the experiences you've been through in your life helped you be like a better husband and father?
I think it starts, that's tough because I know it hasn't always been easy for them because of what I had to overcome. But at the same time, my life, the majority of it, I've been around men and very strong men, and very committed men, and men that hold all these different values and virtues that have added to my life, and the intelligence of these people. But it's been a very masculine dominated existence, and now to be the minority in my family, so much so that my cousins, like 90% of my family was men when I was growing up. Wow. And it was strong women, grandmothers and mothers and aunts, right, that were in the presence of all this, that worked to balance kind of it all out. Yeah. But now having, this amazing wife, my amazing wife, that's very heart-centric, and now a daughter, which my mom is overjoyed with. There's the sweetness of having a daughter in my life. It's the humility that comes with that is it's very easy for me to interact with men or boys. Right? That's very familiar. Yeah. But what do I need to do for my daughter? So what type of man and what type of approach and what type of gentleness do I need to bring and strength for my daughter to build her confidence and self-esteem and understand who she is as a human being, because she gives me so much. Yeah. Right. It's just presence with kids. Yeah. Right. That's what they bring. They bring you into the present, and that is, you can't take that for granted. Yeah. And that's that's where I find a tremendous amount of joy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And we're going camping tomorrow.
I was going to say, what do you like? Oh, that's awesome. So great.
Yeah.
Have you guys done that before?
Yes. So I ended up buying a Sprinter van and modifying it. And the idea was this for the next 20 years, when she was very, very small, are going to be a vehicle to, again, go into nature, develop a relationship with nature, hone that, and embrace it as a lifestyle. So it's a perpetual thing about where we're going to go, what we're going to do, what we're going to explore, and what we're going to just bask in just the sheer beauty of. And my daughter loves it.
So cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And obviously that's coming from you've been on some, I'm now thinking about the trip that you just came back from. That we talked about a few weeks before you left, I think.
Yeah.
So what are some of those experiences with nature that you've taken in that you hope to impart to her?
Again, it comes back to the special humans in your life. And I have a very good friend, Mark, who's just an amazing human being. He's been a professor in the graduate school at Stanford. He's been an investor. He sat on the board of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in terms of their agenda with Africa and what they can provide for Africa. But we also know that life can't be taken for granted. He grew up in a military family. His father was a physician. And we've always asked ourselves, like, it's easy to go on vacations and go relax and put your feet up. But we're the type of people that don't want to take life for granted. So every year we design a trip, and we call it the Earn It trip. And that is something that's going to be very challenging, something that's going to humble us. It's not going to be easy, but something that's going to be beautiful and amazing. So we've been to Patagonia, where we basically circumnavigated the base of the Andes. We've been to the Serengeti, where in Tanzania, we walked across the Serengeti with a guide in the open plains amongst all the animals.
Oh, it gives me chills. That's so cool.
And I can't recommend that enough if people can do it. You're not trapped in a safari jeep. You're humbled by the presence of what's around you. And then just this year, we walked in Tasmania in southern Australia. There's an island, and there's old Aboriginal trails in the southern aspect of the island, and it's just breathtaking. It's not easy.
Yeah.
You take your beating, but at the same time, it's like with a lot of effort comes a lot of reward.
So cool. And I mean, you have, from years of everything you've been through, you have chronic pain. Right?
I do.
And you're doing,
yes,
again, that expanse of experience from having that to being able to do these things. Like how do you bridge that gap?
It's certainly, I have to be wise about what I'm doing, because I do have significant injuries, but at the same time, I look at it like what I'm about to embark on is also going to have tremendous value, whether that's healing value, spiritual value. Life isn't meant to be easy. Life isn't meant to be fair necessarily. I can bask, or I could wallow, I should say, in my own pain and misery, or I can basically reframe that and say it's not going to be easy, but what you're going to get out of it is going to be far greater than you could predict.
Yeah.
And just suck it up and go do it.
There is sometimes a point for suck it up, right? And I'm sure those experiences, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Like, and the older I get, the more I'm prioritizing like experience over stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it's a short ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me, I know I'm more than halfway done.
Yeah.
So what?
It's a crazy concept.
Right, it is. But it's been so rewarding to the point we're at now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't end with retirement. It doesn't end with a goal or an agenda or a success in a certain field. It's what do you want to achieve that has meaning and purpose, but at the same time, what do you want to experience?
Yeah.
And Right? We're lucky enough to live in this amazing country that there are just so many wonderful opportunities in our backyard.
Yeah.
It's just we have to give ourselves the time to step into it.
Yeah. Which you're going to do tomorrow with your
Yes.
little girl.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you hope, with the way that education is today and the things that the next generation is struggling with, what are some of your hopes for her as a parent?
We're living in a system, but we have to look at things with the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is there's a tremendous amount of polarization,
Yeah.
political divide. A lot of, I would say most people recognize that for what it is and see how destructive that is. I think the future that you're trying to build and the awareness that you're trying to create from your platform, and certainly from mine as well, is to be aware of that. And again, just like when we reframe how we address the pains in our life, we need to reframe how interconnected we are, how interdependent we are, embracing one another. Ancient tribes used to sit in circles and everybody had a voice.
Yeah.
And everyone had a perspective. But ultimately, it was in the interest of the community. So that's the world that I want my daughter to be exposed to, is understanding she's a part of something so vast and beautiful, and she's all part of it. But at the same time, that's with our own existence as well. And education right now is, I think it's very interesting. We're at the beginning of this shift.
Yeah.
Is what purpose is it ultimately going? What is it? What's its design and the purpose of it? So how do I supplement that, or what programs do I get my daughter into to address the shortfalls of children sitting at desks and in seats all day long?
Yep.
And then ultimately this thing with fatigue shuts down.
Yeah.
So she's very fortunate right now. She just won the lottery. Like literally, there's a lottery for a Waldorf school.
Oh my God.
So she just got in as a kindergartner. And and this school just happens to be free as well, which we're very blessed. And 4 hours of the day for the children they spend outside.
Yes.
There's gardens, right? There's building things. There's interactions with nature. There's consistent field trips. So it's about exposure, collaboration, social interaction, and and enjoying, and really enjoying. We don't want our kindergartners or right 4th, 5th grade. We're putting them in a system, right, that's stifling them, and in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree.
And so that's that's going to be a part of her.
That's awesome.
Right, her beginning into formal education.
Yeah. No, my youngest, I would take him out and he would surf before school, and I started realizing how much better he would do manage his day when he would start his morning doing something like that. And now in high school, I noticed he signed up for weight training, and I was like, do you know how good that is to have in the middle of your day? I'm like, I hope they put that smack in the middle of your calendar or of your schedule, because it makes such a difference.
It does.
And people, we're in this stagnant, this is the most office work I've ever done, but like getting out, I start every day with yoga, like having something that gets you up and moving. And I look back on my life and I'm like, gosh, I've been doing that. And I wake up, just on the natural. But people have to be out there moving, and we need to be teaching that to our kids.
Yeah.
There's an account called Physiology First that I've found, and they're really starting to connect with the next generation about all these tools. I think I might have found them through Brian and Emily too, but teaching those tools to the next generation is so important, and it's so part of this generational learning and healing that I want to be a part of, and kind of the base of why I started doing what I was doing. But
I've got a question for you.
Oh yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give to a father having 4 children and now moving into their adulthood and having their own successes? I mean, you got children at some of the best universities in the world, and as a successful mother, what advice would you give me or any parent of younger children, especially for me, like a daughter.
Yeah. The thing that I remember most, and I think is really important for dads too, is the physical thing is just getting down on their level. When they're little, I never wanted, and I think it comes from not that I remember having someone do this to me, but like talking down at them versus like, when you get down and you like, because the thing you don't realize is, they say little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. But that bond that you build when they're little is what makes them come to you when they're older. And the phone calls I take now, especially with a mindfulness practice, you'll have that moment where you're like, are you serious? But there's that space where you realize that like, this is the gold. Like everybody wants the kid with the scholarship or the MVP or all of that performance-based stuff. But in parenting, what I've realized really heavily in the last year or two, parenting the hard stuff, if they trust you to parent them in the toughest moments, that's where you want to get, because it is, as hard as it is, it's brilliant. It's what it's all about. And I think as parents, if we can be there for our kids like that, that's what they need. It's not about us being their friend. It's just that they trust us to hold them and to give that space that we're not going to judge them and we're not going to shame them and we're always going to love them no matter what. So, and I think we do that by actually showing them our flaws, not by showing them what's perfect.
Right.
So,
right. And that's very, when things aren't necessarily in a warm space between mom and dad, it's right then working through it, but also working through it with them and saying, this is right. This sometimes isn't, pretty, but this is mommy and daddy have big feelings, and sometimes they come out. But we love each other. We love you, and we're working through it.
Yeah. And always going back to that sense of safety, because there's so much in this world now, and people say, oh, kids need this and this and this and lessons, and these schedules are crazy. It's safety and it's love. Yeah. And consistency. Yeah. And if they know they can count on that, everything else works out.
Oh, I just want my daughter to be around more people like you.
Oh, you're so sweet. I want to meet her. I do. Yeah. We're going to get that dinner one of these days, I'm telling you. Yeah. But, and your wife too. She's lucky to have you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I would say I'm the lucky one.
That's awesome.
She's been very patient through all of this. And she said something amazing the other day. There was a friend that had called me from across the country that was struggling. And I just was talking about, again, where I've been in my life. And, he said something to me. It's like, you seem to have found a lot of balance. And then he said, you seem to have figured it out. I was like, whoa. Oh, yeah. Like, no. But again, I've been very fortunate in California and Southern California, and the programs and the access to a lot of people who are thought leaders or change agents in these healing spaces, right? This is what I've been exposed to, and this is what's worked for me. And my daughter was asleep in the back of the car, and we were supposed to be meeting friends for dinner, and knowing that we were going to be late to this dinner, but at the same time, the phone call was very important. And I got off the phone, and my wife simply said to me, she goes, I think you found your calling. It's just continuing to serve, but in a different capacity. Yeah. Keep on the road you're going. Yeah. You'll find your lane, but you find so much joy in being of service to other people. Yep. Yeah.
And that's the thing. In the hardest moments, like when we, they always say take care of yourself first, which is true. But when we turn outward and we can give back, something in us heals in that process so quickly. Yeah. That's definitely been.
Yeah. Pain is an unfortunate part of our life. Struggle through that pain. But, to all those people out there that if you're continuing to run from your pain, it's okay. Yeah. But just know you're not alone. There are people out there that can help you work through it, find it, and work through it,
Yep.
and then come out on the other side of it.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Everybody needs it.
Don't be afraid, because that's the beauty of our humanity, is most people will get to a really dark point and they forget, like, all I need to do is ask. You can ask a stranger.
Yeah.
And the willingness of even of a stranger helping you is actually far greater than someone you know.
Yeah.
Right?
It's completely.
Because it's ingrained in us as human beings. Let me help you.
Yeah.
Let me lift you up.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So cool.
It is.
I love it. So the question I ask everybody that comes on my show is, what's a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Whew. What would I say to myself? I don't necessarily think there's anything literal I would say to myself other than you're doing just fine, and trust the knowingness that you have, meaning that all of us as human beings have this internal wisdom that we can turn to, that we can draw upon. Continue to find your quiet moments and trust what's going on in here and listen to that, because it'll never lie to us. Yeah. Right?
So true. No matter how many things in the world we encounter that kind of tell us to turn it off, it's that intuition or that mysticism. Like, you always see it in kids.
Yeah.
And the world can make you turn away from it.
Yeah.
But keep turning back.
Right. The world definitely moves us towards a life that exists in here, and it will remove us from, our real possibilities. Yeah. But what advice would you give your younger self?
For me, it's just to believe in myself more.
Yeah.
I don't know why that was always such a hard thing, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's very common, right?
Yeah.
Very common.
So many of these problems we come back to, or not problems, but struggles we go through, like, come back to self-worth. And really understanding that, like, people are powerful. You're powerful. I'm powerful. Little kids are powerful. And what we, imagine what the world would look like if we understood that and brought that forward, rather than all of this, cutting through the shame and the imposter syndrome and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the journey too. Yeah. So,
and we live in an era where there's this free-flowing information and so much to be inspired by, and so much that we hope to really understand. And it's growing up in an era where access to information was relatively limited to these platforms that exist today. It's incredible.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then I also look at it and go, gosh, there's so many things we don't have to know, like remember, if you can't lock it in your brain. Now, granted, a surgeon needs to know what he needs to know when he's got you on the table or whatever, but it's really like how we're developing as people that's going to make a difference, because so much of the stuff is going to be done for us, right? The computers are doing it. How do we relate, and how do we, there's still going to be workplaces, there's families and dinner tables, like, that's not going away.
No, and it's actually, if AI does anything, it's actually going to help pivot us back into our sense of community and interdependence.
Yeah.
And, our local organizations, or, the local farmer, the local baker, everything, seems to be pivoting back to, how everything is intertwined.
I love that. We could do this all day, but that right there, I love your sense of optimism and the way you back it up every day, because that's what really makes an optimist. It's not just saying, like, oh, it's all going to be okay, but it's like how we go about life to know that we're part of making that happen, and you do that. So thank you. It gives me so much hope. It makes my day. I was so looking forward to this interview, and it has been such a joy. So thank you so much for giving me the time. I am humbled and I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
So thank you, all of you, for joining us on What I Meant to Say. And I'm Wendy Jones with Kevin Vance, and just reminding you to be real, be you, and be better. Thank you for joining us on What I Meant to Say, another production of Inspired Edutainment, brought to you by Be Better Media.